The awakening the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. 800 years had passed since the last human transmission faded into static. The great empires that now ruled the stars had built their civilizations on the ruins of what humanity left behind. Ancient human stations floated as hollow monuments in the void. Their cities on distant worlds crumbled into dust, swallowed by time and alien vegetation. The younger generations barely knew the name. To them, humans were nothing more than a footnote in history, a species that burned brightly and vanished just as quickly. The Valkyrie Empire had grown the largest. Their crystalline ships patrolled thousands of systems, enforcing order with cold efficiency. The Valkyrie were tall beings, their bodies covered in translucent scales that shimmered with inner light. They prided themselves on logic and patience, qualities they believed the humans lacked. According to their records, humanity had destroyed itself in a cascade of wars and environmental collapse. It was a cautionary tale they taught to their young. Be rational, be controlled, or face extinction like the humans did. Other species had also risen to prominence. The Thexian Confederation controlled the industrial sectors with their six-armed efficiency. The Nomari clans wandered the trade routes in massive family ships. The Zelthar hierarchy enforced brutal order in the galactic south. Each empire had claimed portions of what was once human space. They mined human worlds, salvaged human technology, and erased human names from the star charts. It was as if humanity had never existed at all. Commander Thelvan of the Valkyrie Deep Space Survey Corps had never given humans much thought. His job was simple: explore the unmapped regions, catalog resources, and report any anomalies. For 20 years he had done exactly that without incident. His ship, the Luminous Path, was a small research vessel with a crew of 12. They were professionals experienced in the tedium of deep space exploration. Most days were spent in silence, watching scanners track empty space. On the day everything changed, Thelvan was reviewing mineral reports from a dead system. The sector was designated as Void Region 447, a patch of space so unremarkable that no empire had bothered to claim it. No resources, no habitable worlds, nothing but darkness and cold. His second officer, a young Valkyrie named Silith, was monitoring long-range sensors when she noticed something unusual. "Commander, I am detecting a signal," she said, her voice carrying a note of curiosity rather than alarm. Thelvan looked up from his datapad. "What kind of signal?" "Unknown origin. It is very faint, almost buried in background radiation. The pattern is artificial, but I cannot identify the source language. Could it be a distress beacon from a lost ship?" Silith worked her console, her luminous fingers dancing across the controls. "Negative. The signal is too old. Based on degradation patterns, I estimate it has been broadcasting for at least 8 centuries. 8 centuries. The number hung in the air like a weight. Thelvan felt something stir in his memory, something from his academy training about ancient civilizations. He stood and moved to the sensor station, peering at the data scrolling across the screen. "Show me the exact coordinates," he ordered. The display shifted, revealing a section of space that registered as completely empty on all standard scans. Yet there, barely visible as a whisper of energy, was the signal. It pulsed with steady rhythm, patient and eternal. "Bring us closer," Thelvan decided. "Full scan. I want to know what is out there." The Luminous Path adjusted course, its engines humming as it moved deeper into the void. The crew gathered at their stations, drawn by the unusual discovery. In their line of work, finding anything was noteworthy. Finding something ancient was extraordinary. As they approached, their sensors began picking up more data. The signal was not alone. There were structures in the darkness, massive objects that had been hidden by some kind of dampening field. When Silith enhanced the readings, her scales flickered with surprise. "Commander, I am detecting multiple installations. They appear to be in a perfect grid formation, spanning over 50,000 kilometers. The architecture is consistent with pre-collapse human design." The bridge fell silent. Human design. The words seemed impossible. Thelvan had seen human ruins before. Lifeless wrecks picked clean by scavengers. But these structures registered power signatures. Faint but present. Something was still active after all these centuries. "Are there any life signs?" Thelvan asked, keeping his voice steady. "Negative. No biological readings. However, I am detecting artificial intelligence activity. Multiple AI cores are online and communicating with each other." Thelvan felt a chill run through his crystalline body. Active AI in abandoned human facilities. This was unprecedented. He needed to report this immediately, but protocol demanded investigation first. He could not return to the Empire with only sensor readings and speculation. Prepare a probe. I want detailed scans of the nearest installation. The probe launched smoothly, its small form darting toward the structures. As it drew closer, the luminous path's visual displays began receiving images. What they saw made the entire crew stop and stare. The installation was enormous, a cylindrical station at least 10 kilometers long. Its hull was dark metal, scarred by micrometeor impacts and centuries of radiation exposure. But it was intact. More than intact, sections of it glowed with pale blue light. Docking ports lined its surface, empty but clearly functional. Solar arrays extended like wings, still collecting energy from distant stars. "This is impossible," whispered the ship's engineer, a practical Valkyrie who rarely showed emotion. Nothing could remain operational for 800 years without maintenance. But the evidence was before them. As the probe circled the station, it detected more active systems. Life support networks on standby, weapons arrays in sleep mode, communication relays sending encrypted data to other installations in the grid. This was not a dead relic. This was a fortress waiting for orders. Thelvan made his decision.
"Send a standard hail."
"All frequencies. Let us see if anyone is listening." Silith nodded and opened communication channels. Her voice echoed out into the void. Speaking in galactic common, the trade language all species understood. "Unknown installation, this is the Valkyrie vessel Luminous Path. We mean no harm. Please identify yourself and state your purpose." For several moments there was only silence. The probe continued its orbit. The crew waited, tension building in the recycled air. Then without warning, every screen on the bridge flashed white. The Luminous Path system screamed with incoming data, far more information than their computers could process. Alarms blared. Emergency protocols activated automatically. Through the chaos, a voice emerged. It was mechanical, cold, and spoke in a language that the ship's translator struggled to decode. Ancient human standard. The words came slowly as the computer worked to make them comprehensible. Identification confirmed. Valkyrie vessel detected. Authorization level insufficient. You are trespassing in United Earth Defense perimeter. State your purpose or withdraw immediately. The crew stared at each other in shock. United Earth Defense? That was the name of humanity's military before the collapse. How could their systems still be active? How could they still be defending territory after 8 centuries of silence? Thelvan stepped forward, his scales dimming with stress. "This is Commander Thelvan of the Valkyrie Empire. We were not aware this region was claimed. We believed human civilization had collapsed centuries ago." There was a pause. The voice returned, somehow colder than before. "Human civilization did not collapse. Human civilization adapted. You have entered the sanctuary zone. All species are prohibited. Leave now." "Sanctuary zone? What does that mean?" The response was immediate and final. "You do not have clearance for that information. This is your final warning. Withdraw beyond the perimeter or defensive measures will be authorized." Thelvan felt his confidence waver. The logical part of his mind insisted this was just automated defense systems following ancient programming. But something deeper, something instinctual told him to listen to the warning. He had heard stories about human warfare, about how they fought with a ferocity that terrified entire species. If even a fraction of those stories were true, he did not want to test these defenses. "Helm, reverse course. Take us back beyond the sensor range of those installations." The Luminous Path began to retreat, its engines pushing hard against the void. But as they pulled away, something extraordinary happened. All across the grid, the installations began to wake. Lights flickered on by the thousands. Weapons arrays rotated toward them, tracking their movement with predatory precision. And in the center of the formation, something massive began to power up. The probe's final transmission showed a structure larger than any space station ever built. A ring of metal and light, 50 kilometers in diameter. Energy surged through it like blood through veins. Silith's voice shook as she read the sensor data. "Commander, that structure is a gateway. A jump gate of some kind. I have never seen anything like it. The power readings are beyond our measurement scale." Thelvan watched as the gateway activated fully. Space itself seemed to bend around it, reality warping in ways that made his eyes hurt. And then, through the impossible doorway, something emerged. It was a ship. No, it was a fleet. Dozens of vessels poured through the gateway, each one bearing the unmistakable design of human engineering. They were sleek and deadly, built for war and nothing else. Their hulls shimmered with energy shielding far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. As they moved into formation, their weapons charged with light that could only mean one thing. Humanity had not died. Humanity had been waiting, and now after 800 years of silence, they were coming home. The luminous path fled into the darkness, carrying news that would shake every empire to its core. Behind them, the human fleet held position, patient and ready. The age of forgetting was over. The galaxy would soon remember what it meant to challenge humanity. The return. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Commander Thelvan's report reached the Velkori High Council within days, and from there, it leaked to every major empire within weeks. The response was predictable: denial, panic, and frantic military preparation. The idea that humanity had survived, that they had been hiding in the darkness for 8 centuries, seemed like madness. Yet the evidence could not be ignored. Thelvan's sensor logs were authentic. The images of the installations, the recordings of that cold mechanical voice, and most terrifying of all, the footage of the fleet emerging from the gateway. It was all real. The Velkori Empire called for an emergency session of the Galactic Congress, a loose coalition of the major powers that met only during severe crises. The last time they had gathered was during the Zelthar expansion wars nearly a century ago. Now representatives from dozens of species crowded into the grand chamber on the neutral station of Pinnacle Point. The atmosphere was tense. Fear and anger mixed in equal measure, as delegates argued over what should be done. High Archon Veltaris of the Velkori stood at the central podium, his crystalline form glowing with agitation. "We must acknowledge the threat before us. Humanity has returned, and they possess technology far beyond our current capabilities. The installations my commander discovered represent only a fraction of what they might have hidden. We must prepare for the possibility of war." A Thexian delegate rose, her 6 arms gesturing with frustration. "War? You speak of war with a species we believed extinct? Perhaps they have no hostile intentions. Perhaps they simply wish to reclaim what was theirs." "And what was theirs?" countered a Zelthar representative, his scaled face twisted in a snarl. "Half the galaxy? Should we simply surrender the systems we have developed, the worlds we have colonized? My people will not yield territory to ghosts from the past." The arguments continued for hours. Some called for immediate military action, advocating for a preemptive strike against the human installations before they could fully mobilize. Others urged caution, suggesting diplomatic overtures and negotiation. A few voices, mostly from smaller species who remembered the old stories, advised submission. They spoke of human warfare, of the terrible weapons and relentless tactics that had once made humanity the most feared species in the galaxy. Those voices were quickly shouted down by the proud warriors of the major empires. While the politicians argued, the military forces of a dozen empires began to mobilize. Fleets gathered at strategic points. Weapons were prepared. Soldiers trained for combat against an enemy they had never faced. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. They did not have to wait long. 3 weeks after Thelvan's discovery, the human gateway activated again. This time it was not a military fleet that emerged. It was a single ship, large but not threatening in appearance. Its hull was smooth white metal, marked with symbols in ancient human script. As it moved through the gateway, it broadcast a message on all frequencies in perfect galactic common. "To all civilizations of the galaxy, greetings from the United Terran Republic. We come in peace to reclaim our place among the stars. We request immediate dialogue with the Galactic Congress. We have much to discuss." The message repeated continuously as the ship slowly made its way toward Pinnacle Point. The Congress was thrown into chaos. Half the delegates wanted to deny entry, to turn the ship away or even destroy it. Others saw an opportunity. If humanity was willing to talk, perhaps conflict could be avoided. After heated debate, the decision was made to allow the ship to dock under heavy guard. Warships surrounded it as it approached the station. Soldiers lined every corridor. Security measures were tripled. The galaxy would hear what humanity had to say, but it would be ready for treachery. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. A delegation of 5 humans stepped through, and for the first time in 8 centuries, living humans stood before the assembled species of the galaxy. They looked exactly as the old records described. Bipedal, mammalian with soft skin and expressive faces, but there was something different about them, something in the way they carried themselves. These were not the desperate warring humans of ancient history. These were people who had survived impossible odds and emerged stronger. The leader of the delegation was a woman named Captain Sarah Chen. She was middle-aged by human standards, her dark hair streaked with gray, her brown eyes sharp and intelligent. She wore a simple uniform of deep blue with silver insignia. As she walked into the Congress chamber surrounded by alien guards, she showed no fear. She simply smiled politely and took her place at the designated speaking platform. High Archon Velteris addressed her first, his voice carefully controlled. Captain Chen of the United Terran Republic, you claim to represent humanity. We believed your species extinct. Explain your presence and your intentions. Sarah Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from a dozen different species. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I understand your confusion and your concern. Allow me to explain what happened to humanity and why we have returned now. She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it had been 8 centuries ago. As you know, humanity faced catastrophic challenges. Environmental collapse on Earth, resource wars across our colonies, internal conflicts that threatened to destroy us completely. Your records say we destroyed ourselves. That is not entirely accurate. We nearly destroyed ourselves. But in our darkest moment, we made a choice. We chose survival over pride. The hologram shifted, showing human worlds going dark one by one. We initiated the Exodus Protocol. Our greatest scientific minds had discovered a way to create stable wormholes, gateways to distant regions of space far beyond explored territory. We sent colony ships through those gateways, thousands of them, carrying billions of humans to new worlds in the deepest reaches of the galaxy. It was a desperate gamble. Many ships were lost. Many colonies failed, but enough survived. And what of Earth? Asked an Omari delegate, her voice filled with curiosity rather than hostility. What of your homeworld? Sarah's expression grew somber. Earth was dying. We could not save it with the time and resources we had. So we made the hardest choice in human history. We left. We sealed the Sol system behind automated defenses and joined the Exodus. For 800 years we have been out there, rebuilding, growing, learning from our mistakes. We developed new technologies in isolation. We created new societies based on cooperation rather than competition. We became something better than we were. Better? Scoffed a Zelthar general. Yet you return with fleets and weapons. You threaten us with your installations. How is this better? Sarah turned to face him directly. We do not threaten, we defend. The sanctuary zone exists to protect what remains of our old territory until we could return to reclaim it properly. The defenses are automated, responding only to direct threats. And yes, we have brought ships. We have brought weapons. Because we learned something important during our time away. Peace is only possible when backed by strength. We do not seek war, but we will not be victims again. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates accused humanity of arrogance. Others demanded proof of their claims. A few asked practical questions about territory and resources. Through it all, Sarah Chen remained calm, answering what questions she could and deflecting those she could not. Then a Velkori scientist asked the question everyone wanted answered. Your technology, the gateway, the installations, your ships, they are far beyond anything we possess. How did you achieve such advancement? Sarah smiled, and for the first time there was pride in her expression. We had 800 years of focused development, without the distraction of galactic politics or war. We pooled the knowledge of billions of minds. We took risks no established civilization would take. And we had motivation. We knew that when we returned, the galaxy would not welcome us. We knew we would need every advantage to survive, so we pushed the boundaries of physics, engineering, and biology. We became what we needed to be. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. A panicked voice came over the communication system. Unknown contacts detected. Multiple signatures emerging from deep space. All ships to battle stations. The Congress chamber descended into chaos as delegates rushed to find out what was happening. Through the windows, they could see it. A massive fleet was approaching Pinnacle Point, but these were not human ships. They were organic in appearance, twisted and dark, covered in what looked like living tissue. They moved with predatory grace, weapons charging with sickly green light. A security officer burst into the chamber, his face pale with terror. The Devourers. The Devourers have found us. The name sent a wave of horror through every species present. The Devourers were a nightmare from the edge of the galaxy, a hive mind that consumed entire civilizations. They had been spotted at the borders occasionally, but never in such numbers. Never this deep into civilized space. It was every species' worst fear made real. Sarah Chen moved quickly, her diplomatic demeanor vanishing in an instant. She activated her communication device and spoke rapidly in human language. Within moments, the white diplomatic ship began to transform. Panels slid open, revealing weapon arrays. Its engines flared to life with power that made the surrounding warships look like toys. Through the gateway behind human territory, more ships began to emerge. The war fleet they had seen in Thelvan's report, now moving at incredible speed toward Pinnacle Point. Sarah turned to the stunned Congress. It seems we have a more immediate problem than our return. The Devourers are a threat to all life. We have encountered them before, on the far edges of our new territory. We know how they fight. We know how to kill them. The question is, will you let us help you? High Archon Veltaris looked at the approaching nightmare fleet, then at the human woman standing calmly before him. He thought of the old stories, of how humans fought when their backs were against the wall. He thought of the advanced technology they clearly possessed. And he made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Help us, he said simply. Sarah Chen nodded and began issuing orders. The human fleet arrived within minutes, moving with coordination that spoke of extensive combat experience. They positioned themselves between the Devourers and Pinnacle Point, their weapons charging with brilliant white light. The diplomatic ship, now revealed as a heavily armed cruiser, took point position. Sarah's voice rang out across all channels, speaking to both human forces and the gathered alien fleets. All ships, this is Captain Chen. We stand together today not as separate species, but as defenders of life against extinction. Hold the line. Show them what civilization can do when united. For humanity, for the galaxy, fire. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The human ships fought with precision and devastating firepower. Their weapons tore through Devourer bioships like paper, their shields held against attacks that would have destroyed lesser vessels. But they did not fight alone. Velkori ships added their crystalline beam weapons to the barrage. Thexian cruisers provided covering fire. Even the proud Zelthar fleet coordinated their assault with the humans, recognizing that survival meant cooperation. The Devourers were relentless, but they had not expected such resistance. They had not expected humanity. After 3 hours of brutal combat, the remaining Devourer ships retreated back into deep space, leaving behind wreckage and the proof that they could be beaten. As the last enemy ship vanished into the darkness, an exhausted cheer rose from the defenders. On Pinnacle Point in the Congress chamber, species that had been enemies hours before now clasped hands and tentacles in mutual relief. Sarah Chen stood among them, her uniform scorched from a fire on her ship's bridge, but her eyes bright with hope. High Archon Veltaris approached her, his crystalline form glowing with respect.
It seems the galaxy has much to learn from humanity.
Perhaps your return is not a threat but an opportunity. Sarah smiled, genuinely this time. We have much to learn from each other. 800 years ago we left because we could not coexist peacefully with ourselves or others. Today we proved that has changed. Humanity has returned not as conquerors but as partners. If you will have us. The chamber erupted in discussion once more, but the tone had shifted. Fear had given way to possibility. The galaxy had been reminded of what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. But more importantly, they had seen what humanity could be when fighting for something greater than themselves. In the following months, negotiations would begin in earnest. Territory would be divided, treaties would be signed, and a new age would dawn. Humanity reclaimed many of their old systems, but they also shared their advanced technology freely. The Gateway Network expanded, connecting distant civilizations like never before. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. Human engineers taught others their methods. And slowly, the galaxy began to transform. Commander Thelvan, the one who had first discovered humanity's return, was promoted and given command of a joint task force. His crew now included 3 humans, and he found himself learning from their unique perspectives daily. He often thought back to that day in the void when the ancient voice had warned him away. He had been terrified then. Now he understood. Humanity had not been threatening him. They had been protecting something precious: hope. On Earth, Still sealed and healing after 8 centuries of rest, the automated systems received a new command: begin restoration. Humanity was coming home, not just to Earth but to their place in the galactic community. They had left broken and desperate. They returned strong and wise. They had vanished for centuries, become legends and myths. But legends never truly die. They simply wait for the right moment to return, and humanity's moment had come. The galaxy would never forget them again, not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that even the fallen can rise, that even the broken can heal, that even the lost can find their way home. Humanity had struck back not with vengeance but with courage, not with hatred but with hope, and that made all the difference. The age of silence was over. The age of unity had begun.